Goldberg, the most feared wrestler who destroyed everyone in his path, they warned him. They doubted him. They tried to stop him. They said the ring was too big for him. They said wrestling was not meant for a man like him. They said power alone was never enough. But history has never listened to doubt, and that night, when the lights dimmed, when the crowd buzzed like a restless ocean, when the air grew heavy as if the heavens were watching, nothing could have prepared them for what was about to happen. Because a man did not walk into that arena, a storm did. Boom, boom. Heavy footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Each step carried the weight of something greater than a body of flesh and bone. Smoke curled around the entrance. Fire licked the darkness. The ground trembled under the rhythm of his march. A low chant began. Like a whisper in the distance, Goldberg, Goldberg. The chant grew stronger, louder, angrier, hungry. Before Goldberg, strength had limits. Before Goldberg, men showed mercy. Before Goldberg, legends only lived in stories told by the old and the drunk, but as he stepped through the smoke, as the flames rose beside him, as his massive form became clear to thousands of widened eyes, the world understood something new. Legends were real, and they were terrifying. His face was cold, carved from stone and war. His eyes were still the calm before destruction. His fists were closed not in anger, but in certainty. He did not smile. He did not wave. He did not acknowledge the world around him. He simply walked, not as a performer, but as a force of nature that had been unleashed, and in that moment, a question shook the hearts of all who watched. Who could stop a storm? But long before the lights, before the titles, before the chant of his name filled arenas, he was just a boy surrounded by open fields and hard work. A boy who learned early that strength was not gifted, it was earned. Beneath the burning sun, while others slept and played, Goldberg ran. He lifted. He pushed himself until his lungs burned, until his muscles screamed for mercy. Yet he gave them none. While other boys trained for applause, Goldberg trained for survival. People around him noticed. Neighbors whispered. Coaches stared in awe. Older men shook their heads in disbelief. That boy is not normal, they would say. Something ancient lives inside him. He did not hear them. He only heard the calling of something greater, pulling him forward, step by step, toward a fate he did not yet understand. Football came first, a battlefield of its own, a place where pain was language and power was law. He crashed into men twice his size. He broke through lines as if they were made of paper. He stood even when his body begged him to fall. But fate had a bigger stage waiting, a different ring, a place where warriors were not just tested, they were made immortal. And when he finally stepped into that world of professional wrestling, everything changed. The training was brutal, bodies slammed, bones ached, blood was common. Fear lived quietly in corners, but Goldberg did not fear it. He welcomed it. Pain, to him, was a tool. Fear was an enemy. Weakness was something that did not deserve to survive. Day after day, his form was sculpted into something almost unreal. Each muscle hardened like steel. Each movement sharpened like a blade. He was not just preparing to wrestle. He was preparing to conquer. Then came his first match. The arena wasn't full, but the tension was enough to crack stone. A confident opponent stood across from him, smiling, almost amused. You're new, the man said, flexing his arms. This isn't the gym. Goldberg said nothing. The bell rang, and in an instant, everything changed. He charged forward like a missile launched by destiny itself. The spear shook the ring. The opponent's smile vanished, replaced by shock and pain. A lift, a slam. The mat cried out beneath the impact. 1, 2, 3. The match was over. Silence swallowed the arena before it exploded into madness. Another victory. But what none of them knew was that this was only the beginning of something far more dangerous. A force was rising. A legend was awakening. Week after week, he returned. At first, people came out of curiosity, then out of excitement, then out of fear, then out of devotion. Each time the same story repeated itself. A challenger would step into the ring full of pride, full of faith, full of foolish confidence. Then the storm would strike, a blur of power, a thunderous spear, a bone-crushing jackhammer, a lifeless fall. 1, 2, 3, 10 wins. The commentators laughed in disbelief. Beginner's luck, they said. 25 wins. The laughter faded. What is happening? They asked. 50 wins. Doubt turned to fear. Is this even possible? 70 wins. And here, The world truly understood. Not a single man lasted more than a few minutes against him. Not a single man escaped without pain carved into memory. Not a single warrior could describe what it felt like to stand against Goldberg without their voice trembling. Men who had once claimed they felt no fear began to avoid his name. Doors closed when he walked past. Eyes dropped. Voices hushed. They stopped saying, "Who can beat him?" They started saying, "Who is brave enough to try?" Belts found their way to his shoulders as though drawn by destiny. Gold, steel, glory. When he raised the championship into the air, it did not feel like a man holding a title. It felt like a king lifting his crown. The crowd worshipped. Children wore his name. Young fighters tried to copy his walk, his gaze, his silence. He was becoming more than an athlete. He was becoming a myth, and still, he walked alone. Then came the warning. A message moved through the locker room like poison in the air. There was a man coming, a man who had studied Goldberg's movements, a man who understood patterns and had found none, a man who claimed he had seen the future. And in that future, Goldberg fell. "He bleeds like any other man," the challenger told the world. The crowd laughed in disbelief. Goldberg said nothing, but for the first time, the air around him felt heavier. The night of their meeting arrived. The arena was packed beyond capacity. People stood on chairs, hung from railings, pressed against walls, desperate to witness history with their own eyes. The challenger stood in the ring, focused, still, calculating. Then the music hit. Fire erupted. Smoke devoured the entrance. The ground trembled once more, and then he appeared. The storm had come again. Every eye followed his slow, unstoppable march toward the ring. There was no rush, no hesitation, only destiny walking in human form. If you had been there that night, would you have cheered? Or would you have been too afraid to speak? The bell rang. Power collided with power. Titan met Titan. Blows echoed like thunder. The crowd screamed with every impact. For the first time, his opponent did not fall. For the first time, Goldberg staggered. Shock spread across the arena like a wave. Hope and fear danced together in living hearts. Minutes stretched into eternities. Every movement could change history. And then, the unthinkable happened. The man who had never fallen was finally pushed beyond a limit. The 3 count echoed. 1, 2, 3. Silence. Not because a new champion stood victorious, but because an era had just ended. People didn't know how to feel. They had not lost hope in a man. They had watched time itself change direction. Goldberg lay there, breathing, broken, human. Slowly, he pushed himself to his knees, then to his feet. The crowd rose, not for a winner, but for a legend. Tears fell. Cheers turned into a thunderstorm of respect. He looked around the arena one last time. No anger, no shame, no regret. Only understanding, because true legends are not defined by perfection. They are defined by impact. After that night, the storm changed shape. He returned when the world needed him. He fought when the call came again. He reminded everyone that legends never truly disappear. They only wait, and even as years passed, even as new champions rose, even as new names echoed through new arenas, there was one name the ring could not forget. One name that still echoed in the bones of the mat. One name that still made warriors pause and swallow hard. Goldberg. He was not just a man. He was not just a wrestler. He was a moment in history that could never be repeated. And somewhere, deep inside every arena, in the silent moments before a bell rings, in the deep breath a fighter takes before stepping into the light, the storm is still there, waiting, listening for the sound of its name to be called again. Goldberg.